The Grand Ballroom at Buckingham Palace is not merely a dining room, it is a theatre of high-stakes diplomacy where a single misplaced fork can signal a breach of centuries-old protocol. Before a single guest steps onto the plush red carpets, a small army of staff has already spent days preparing the battlefield. They polish over 4,000 pieces of silver gilt from the grand service, originally commissioned by George IV, until they gleam with a mirror-like finish that reflects the terrified faces of the uninitiated. The atmosphere is heavy with the scent of beeswax, fresh flowers, and the palpable tension of perfectionism. This is not a dinner party in the conventional sense. It is a carefully choreographed military operation disguised as a meal, designed to project the overwhelming power and continuity of the British monarchy. For the lucky, or perhaps unlucky, 170 guests invited to a state banquet, the experience is a minefield of etiquette traps. These events are the apex of soft power, usually held to honour visiting heads of state. And every movement, from the angle of a tiara to the pacing of a soup spoon, is governed by a rulebook that has not changed significantly since the Victorian era. To receive an invitation is a great honour, but to survive the night without embarrassment requires a masterclass in observation and restraint. The grandeur is designed to intimidate, to remind every person in the room that they are guests in the house of history itself. But behind the gold plate and the crystal glasses lies a bizarre world of secret signals, forbidden foods, and geometric precision that borders on the obsessive. Most people assume that wealth and status grant you freedom, but inside these walls, they grant you only restriction. A billionaire CEO or a foreign president is just as bound by the royal rotation of conversation as a junior diplomat. The rules here do not bend for celebrity or political clout. They are absolute. Tonight, we are peeling back the velvet curtain to examine the rigorous, strange, and sometimes terrifying regulations that govern a state banquet. From the hidden traffic lights that control the service to the specific way a napkin must be folded to avoid insulting the host, these are the mechanisms that keep the royal machine running flawlessly. Prepare to enter a world where eating is secondary to performing, and where the slightest deviation is noted by everyone. Number 10. The geometric obsession of the table setting. Long before the first course is served, the table itself is subjected to a level of scrutiny that would baffle a mathematician. The sheer scale of the table is difficult to comprehend. It is a horseshoe shape often stretching vast lengths, requiring staff to wear socks over their shoes to walk upon the table itself during the setting process to ensure the polish remains pristine. But the true strangeness lies in the measurements. Every single place setting is allotted exactly 18 inches of space, no more, no less. This is not an estimation. It is a mandate enforced with measuring sticks. Staff members spend hours measuring the distance between the knife and the fork, the glass and the plate, and the chair and the table edge. The symmetry must be absolute. If a guest were to look down the long line of the table, the glasses should align perfectly, creating a single tunnel of crystal. This obsession with geometry serves a psychological purpose. It imposes order on the gathering, subtly enforcing the idea that the monarchy is a stable, unshakable structure. When a guest sits down, they are literally boxed in by history, confined to their 18 inches of royal estate. It is a physical reminder that while you are a guest, you are merely a small part of a much larger, perfectly ordered machine. Number 9. The pre-dinner procession protocol. The terror begins before the soup arrives. The procession into the ballroom is a rigid exercise in hierarchy that dates back to the royal courts of the Middle Ages. Guests do not simply wander in and find their seats. They must form a procession based on precedence, a complex ranking system that determines who walks ahead of whom. The monarch and the visiting head of state lead the way, followed by other members of the royal family and high-ranking guests in descending order of importance. To step out of line or to walk ahead of a royal of higher rank is a grave insult to the crown. This rule extends to the seating arrangement itself, which takes months to finalise. The placement of a guest indicates their favour and political importance at that specific moment in time. Being seated near the host is the ultimate honour, while the ends of the table are often colloquially known as Siberia. Once the procession begins, the room falls silent, and the guests must stand by their chairs. They cannot sit until the monarch has taken their seat. The national anthem is played, toasts are exchanged, and only then, after what feels like an eternity of standing in stiff formal wear, does the meal actually begin. It is a test of stamina and patience designed to establish authority before a single calorie is consumed. Number 8. The ban on shellfish and garlic. One might expect a banquet of this caliber to feature the most exotic and pungent flavours the culinary world has to offer. But the menu at Buckingham Palace is surprisingly conservative, governed by a strict list of forbidden ingredients. For decades, garlic has been entirely banned from the royal menu. This rule, largely attributed to Queen Elizabeth II's dislike of the flavour and the practical need to avoid bad breath during diplomatic conversations, has become a standard. While King Charles is known to be a foodie with more adventurous tastes, the ban on heavy garlic usually remains in force for state banquets to ensure no diplomat is offended by the scent of their neighbour. Even more critical is the prohibition of shellfish. While this rule has relaxed slightly in modern private dining, it is still strictly observed during major state visits and foreign tours. The risk is purely practical: food poisoning. The royal family cannot afford to be incapacitated by a bad oyster when they have a schedule packed with engagements. Furthermore, messy foods that require complex manoeuvring, like spaghetti or bone-in meats, are almost never served. The menu is designed for ease of eating, ensuring that dignity is maintained at all times. A guest struggling to extract meat from a lobster claw would be a visual disaster in such a refined setting. Number 7. The royal rotation of conversation. Perhaps the most anxiety-inducing rule for the socially awkward is the royal rotation. You cannot simply speak to whomever you please. The conversation is choreographed. During the first course, the host, usually the monarch, will speak to the guest on their right. The guest of honour must reciprocate. Everyone at the table is expected to follow suit, turning to their right to engage their neighbour. It creates a domino effect of conversation down the line. If you turn left while the monarch turns right, you will be staring at the back of someone's head, leaving your other neighbour in awkward silence. Then, as the second course arrives, the entire room switches. The monarch turns to the guest on their left, and the flow of conversation reverses. This ensures that every guest receives equal attention and that no one is excluded. It is a forced socialization that requires guests to have conversation topics ready for two completely different people. Ignoring this rule is seen as a slight to the person you are supposed to be engaging. It turns a casual chat into a disciplined exercise in diplomatic equality, where silence is not an option, but speaking out of turn is a violation of the rhythm. Number 6. The traffic light system for service. While the guests struggle with conversation rules, the staff are operating under a high-tech system that remains almost entirely invisible to those dining. Because the ballroom is so vast and the acoustics so echoing, shouting orders is impossible. Instead, the palace utilizes a hidden traffic light system to coordinate the service of over 100 plates simultaneously. Hidden in the balcony or unobtrusive corners, lights signal the servers when to enter, when to clear, and when to pour wine. A blue light might signal the servers to stand by, while an amber light commands the team to enter the room in unison. The goal is synchronized service. Every plate at a section must touch the tablecloth at the exact same moment, It is a ballet of logistics. If one server is too fast or too slow, the visual symmetry is broken. This system ensures that the noise of the service is kept to an absolute minimum, maintaining the illusion that the food simply appears by magic. For the guest, it creates an eerie sense of being watched, as the staff moves with a hive-mind intelligence controlled by invisible signals. Number 5. The touching protocol. There is a golden rule that applies to every interaction with British royalty, but it becomes even more charged in the close quarters of a banquet. Do not touch the monarch. Protocol dictates that no one should touch a member of the royal family unless they offer their hand first. This rule exists to maintain the mystique and separation between the sovereign and the public. In a banquet setting, this can be tricky. A friendly pat on the back, a guiding hand on the elbow, or an enthusiastic handshake can cause a media firestorm. History is littered with guests who forgot this rule. When Michelle Obama placed her arm around Queen Elizabeth II, it made global headlines. While the Queen did not make a scene, the breach of protocol was analysed for weeks. In the dining room, this means keeping one's hands to oneself, even after a few glasses of vintage wine. The physical distance is a barrier of respect. To bridge it without invitation is to presume an intimacy that does not exist. It is a reminder that the person sitting next to you is not just a dinner companion, but a living symbol of the state. Number 4. The tiara and dress code, the strictness. The dress code for a state banquet is white tie, the most formal dress code in Western fashion. For men, this means a black tailcoat, a white wing collar shirt, and a white bow tie. For women, it means floor-length evening gowns. But the most specific rules govern the jewellery, specifically tiaras. There is a strict tradition regarding who can wear a tiara and when. Tiaras are generally reserved for married women or members of the royal family. It is an old custom rooted in the idea that a tiara signalled a woman was off the market and not looking for a husband. Furthermore, the time of day matters. Diamonds and tiaras are never worn before 6 p.m. Before this hour, they are considered gaudy and inappropriate. At a state banquet, which always takes place in the evening, the sparkle is unleashed, but the rules of wearing them remain. Guests must ensure their sash, if they possess a royal order, is worn on the correct shoulder, which varies depending on the specific order. A sash worn right to left when it should be left to right is a glaring error that will be spotted immediately by the experts in the room. It is a uniform of elite status, and wearing it incorrectly suggests you do not belong. Number 3. The napkin code. Even the humble napkin is subject to a code of conduct that guests must memorize. At the start of the meal, the napkin is folded in a specific, often elaborate shape. Once the guest sits, they must unfold it and place it on their lap, never tucking it into their collar. But the critical signals come when the guest needs to leave the table. If a guest must excuse themselves to use the restroom, though they should never actually say the word toilet, they must place their napkin on their chair. This signals to the staff that they are returning. However, if the guest places the napkin on the table to the left of their plate, it signals that they are finished with the meal. If they do this prematurely, a server might whisk their plate away before they have taken their last bite. Furthermore, the napkin must never be crumpled. It should be placed down with a degree of neatness, though not refolded perfectly. These fabric signals prevent the need for verbal communication with the staff, keeping the airwaves clear for diplomatic dialogue. It is a silent language of linen that prevents awkward interruptions. Number 2. The pace of the monarch. This is perhaps the most famous and difficult rule to follow. You must eat at the pace of the monarch. When the king or queen lifts their fork, you may lift yours. But more importantly, when the monarch stops eating, you stop eating. It does not matter if you have only taken 2 bites of your venison. If the king lays down his cutlery, the course is over. Staff are trained to clear the plates immediately once the host has finished. This dates back to Queen Victoria, who was a notoriously fast eater, often leaving her guests hungry as plates were snatched away the moment she was done. While modern royals are often more considerate, pacing themselves to allow guests time to eat, the rule remains technically in force. This creates a subconscious pressure to monitor the host constantly. You cannot get lost in your meal. You must eat efficiently and keep one eye on the head of the table. It reinforces the hierarchy. The monarch controls the time, the pace, and the nourishment of everyone in the room. To continue eating after the host has stopped is seen as greedy and disrespectful, a failure to acknowledge the rhythm of the court. Number 1. The termination signals. The end of the evening is not determined by the clock, but by a secret signal given by the monarch. For decades, Queen Elizabeth II used her handbag as a semaphore device. If she placed her bag on the table, it was a 5-minute warning that she wanted the event to end. If she shifted it from one arm to the other during conversation, it was a distress signal for a lady in waiting to rescue her. King Charles likely has his own variations of these signals, perhaps a specific adjustment of his cuffs or a nod to a specific aid. Once the signal is given, the machinery of the palace gears up to dismantle the event. Guests are gently shepherded away, cars are summoned, and the night concludes. There is no hanging around for a nightcap unless explicitly invited to a private area. When the monarch stands to leave, the banquet is effectively over. Guests must stand and remain standing until the royal family has exited the room. This final rule encapsulates the entire experience. You are there at the pleasure of the crown, and when that pleasure is exhausted, the magic abruptly ends, leaving you to find your way back to the ordinary world. These rules, seemingly archaic and overly complex, serve a function that goes beyond mere manners. They are the scaffolding of a living institution. By forcing guests to submit to a strict code of conduct, the monarchy reinforces its relevance and its distinctness from the rest of society. It is a way of saying that some things, tradition, order, and hierarchy, still matter in a chaotic world. Do you think these protocols preserve the dignity of the institution, or are they just an exhausting relic of a bygone era that needs to be modernized? I'd love to hear your perspective on whether you'd survive a dinner like this, or if you'd be escorted out before the soup course. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of royal life, hitting the like button helps us uncover more stories like this. And for more investigations into the secret lives of the elite, make sure you're subscribed. We have a video coming up on the security secrets of the Vatican that you won't want to miss. I'll see you in the next one.